Republicans were feeling a lot of political pressure. The politics on this has changed.
It has, especially over the last 2 weeks. These tragic killings in Minneapolis at the hands of ICE and CPB agents has really changed the politics of this issue, and rightly so. We saw now Trump negotiate with the Senate Democrats and pass this measure today. Now we have 2 weeks to see if there will be any meaningful change with ICE. And I think most Americans would like to see some form of more accountability on ICE.
Yeah, so let's drill down on that. So the deal that they passed today basically said they didn't come to a deal on what we're going to do about ICE, because that's really complicated. They said we're going to give ourselves 2 weeks to figure the rest of that out, but while we talk, we're going to keep the rest of the government open. Now, figuring that out in 2 weeks does not seem very easy. I mean, what's a potential deal that could be likely that Republicans could get behind, that they would feel good about, and be able to sell to their base? Because immigration matters a lot to people on the right.
Yeah, I think you're going to have both the Republican and Democratic bases upset with some of the negotiations over the next 2 weeks. Not a lot of time to come up with any meaningful policy. The substance here is that ICE should have judicial warrants when they're conducting these arrests, having body cameras like many law enforcement agencies across the country, and more training, better training, to avoid the type of situations we've seen over the last couple weeks. So we would like to see that negotiation. I think it's very unlikely we'll see any meaningful reform.
So you have an interesting term called the division industrial complex, which is essentially that there hasn't been a real deal on immigration in 40 years because both sides benefit from there not being a deal.
Yeah, for a long time, both political parties have profited more by having immigration on the ballot than actually resolving it. This is one of the most divisive issues that political parties, political elites can use to fundraise on. And as a result, even at times in the last 15 years, there have been pretty significant bipartisan majorities on pieces of immigration reform. They haven't brought it to a real vote, and they haven't passed it. And so now you see the type of unrest and violence on the streets today.
Because the bases of the parties don't want it in terms of a deal. They won't allow it. And the donors of the parties don't allow it. And when you got both of those things pulling you this way, it's hard to get to the middle.
Absolutely. And immigration is a good lens to look at this larger division industrial complex, because this system is a multi-billion-dollar industry that profits on making people hate each other all the time and dividing us. It's political operatives, it's social media algorithms, it's some elements of the media. And so it's really hard for Americans to believe that we can come to an agreement on big issues like immigration. The truth is we can, but the discourse doesn't make us feel like it's possible.
Yeah, I mean, President Trump talked about the concept of de-escalating this week, but then we see something like what just happened with Don Lemon in court today. What's your take on that?
Well, we, of course, do not want to get into a practice in America where journalists are getting arrested. However, I will say that Don Lemon has taken a particular turn in his journalistic career, which is being more of an activist journalist. And I think that this arrest really works really well for his career, to be honest. This martyrism will definitely elevate his brand and his platform to a level that it hasn't been previously since he left CNN. And so my bigger question, though, is I do think we need journalists in America who are speaking to the majority of Americans and not to an increasingly narrow slice of Americans. And I'm troubled that Don is going in that direction.
Well, and because that's the way you get clicks online.
Yes,
right?
Exactly.
Nuance doesn't necessarily sell. The outrageous headline is what gets you in that space, and that's how you make money. But you are trying to bring people together, something we're trying to do with this show as well, bring people from different perspectives. You've been on stage with Charlie Kirk and Cenk Uygur. You're kind of literally the guy in the middle of some of these very, very different perspectives. What do you think works to unite people in these situations?
Well, I think the idea right now is to talk about the issue and not the party. And increasingly, voters are looking for that. They're detaching from both political parties. And I think what we did with some of those debates that you're referencing is have a nuanced, entertaining conversation. I do think nuance is viable and exciting, because how entertaining is it when you have two predictable views just clashing with each other, with the political hack on the left and political hack on the right. I think Americans want to know what's actually going to benefit their lives and resonate with the real conversations they're having in their own communities. And I think our country is starving for that, and it's absolutely possible.
Well, you're speaking my language, because that's certainly what I believe in and certainly what we're trying to do here. Stephen, thank you. Great to have you here for the first time. Hope you'll come back
Absolutely.
and we can get more into this because it's such an important issue.
Thank you.
Let's talk about the weather.